You ever feel a moment get carved into your memory like a scar? That was me, standing barefoot on the hardwood floor of our cabin, watching Dana click the clasp on her bracelet like she wasn't about to set the whole world on fire. "I'll be back late," she said, her voice like polished glass. "Don't wait up." I blinked at her. Red dress. Heels. Hair curled like she was heading to the Emmys. And perfume, Jesus. The whole living room smelled like one of those designer stores where salespeople look at guys like me and decide we can't afford anything. "Girls' night?" I asked, just to see how deep the rabbit hole went. Dana smiled. "Cold. Practiced." "No. I'm going on a date." I felt the sentence land in my chest before my brain caught up. She said it like we were talking about weather. Like I was her roommate. Like the last 7 years were a warm-up act and she was finally stepping into her real life. "You're serious?" She didn't even flinch. "Don't be jealous, Conrad. That's not attractive." The part that killed me? I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even move. I just looked at her, felt my hands curling into fists at my sides. "I wonder what your brother will think when he hears about this," I said. That got her. Just for a second. Her lips parted like she forgot how to breathe, and her eyes flicked to the side, trying to read me. Greg. Her brother. The one who dropped in every couple weeks with venison steaks and small talk. The one who thought Dana walked on water. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "Sure," I murmured. She recovered fast, slipped on her coat, grabbed her clutch, and walked out the door like I was a pothole she didn't have time to fix. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was surgical, like someone had opened me up and walked away mid-operation. I stood there, still smelling her perfume, trying to figure out how I'd gotten here. I was 44 years old. My name is Conrad Boyd. I live in Missoula, Montana, and I teach people how to stay alive in the wild. You'd think I'd notice when the person sharing my bed had already started building an escape route. But no. Turns out, you can be trained to recognize the warning signs of hypothermia, but still miss the moment your fiancé goes cold. The couch creaked when I sat down. Our dog, Shadow, lifted his head from the rug and gave me that look only animals have, like they understand without needing the words. I replayed it all. Her tone. That smile. The way she didn't even bother to lie. Whatever this was, it hadn't started tonight. And I wasn't about to let it in with me staring at a closed door. The next morning, I woke up at 5 without needing an alarm. Muscle memory from years in search and rescue. I lay there for a minute, staring at the knotty pine ceiling of the cabin, letting the weight of last night settle in. Dana was still gone. That wasn't a surprise. What was surprising was how calm I felt. Detached, almost. Like I had slipped into instructor mode, what I used to call survival head. No panic. No anger. Just analysis. She's cheating. Step 1. Confirm the threat. Step 2. Plan for the long haul. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. Old school. No apps. Just pen and paper. I drew a line down the middle and labeled the columns, before and after. Before, Dana stayed home most nights. She cooked with me. We used to do puzzles on Sunday mornings, listen to old blues records, talk about hiking trips. After, more nights away. Yoga retreats. Girls' weekends. A new fitness tracker I never saw her use. Receipts from boutiques I didn't recognize. That's when I remembered the thing with her phone. About 3 months ago, she got jumpy whenever I walked past her on the couch. Always flipping it face down. Swiping notifications away before I could glance over. I didn't press it then. Should've. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared credit card account. She never used cash before. We always joked about how it was sketchy. But lately, the balance had started dropping faster than usual. I clicked through the last 4 months. There it was. A sudden spike in cash withdrawals. 1,000 here. 800 there. Restaurants in Bozeman, Whitefish, even Spokane. And none of them names I recognized. Not even the outdoor gear shops she liked. I kept digging. Boutique charges from a place called Bellissima & Company. I Googled it. High-end lingerie and spa packages. Not the kind of place Dana would shop for herself without bragging. I went cold. Because in all these purchases, not once had she brought anything home. This wasn't an affair of the heart. This was strategy. She was laying groundwork. I leaned back and rubbed my jaw. This wasn't a moment to confront. Not yet. I'd spent too many years teaching people to stay calm when panic could kill them. You don't run into the woods without a compass. You track. You observe. You stay hidden. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to Greg's number. Dana's brother. Game warden. The guy who'd taught me how to field dress and elk before I even knew how to bake bread. About a month ago, he'd asked an odd question. Said Dana mentioned she was going to a yoga retreat in Big Fork. Asked if I'd ever been to the resort up there. I said no, and he got real quiet. Back then, I chalked it up to small talk. Now I wasn't so sure. Greg saw something. Or he suspected. And if he was poking around, it meant this wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. I didn't call him. Not yet. Instead, I opened a secure folder on my laptop and started dropping in screenshots, transaction records, timestamps, maps of her favorite retreat destinations. This wasn't a breakup. This was a slow burn operation. And I wasn't about to let her burn the life we built without finding out why. A couple days later, I drove to a rustic lodge just outside Whitefish, one of the places Dana had supposedly gone for a wellness seminar. The woman at the front desk looked like she'd been working there since the Reagan era, sharp eyes, practical haircut, and a mouth that didn't move unless it had something worth saying. I handed her a photo of Dana from a hiking trip last fall. Ever seen her around here? She glanced at the picture, then looked up at me with a slight frown. Yeah, she's been here. Couple weekends. Checked in under her name. By herself? The woman snorted. Not hardly. Always with some guy. Real confident type. Tall. Loud. Had a tan like he'd just come back from the Bahamas. Name. She tapped her pen on the counter, thinking. Trevor. Trevor Mann, I think. The blood drained from my face. Trevor Mann. I hadn't heard that name in 3 years. He'd come to Ridge Edge back when I was still running our summer survival intensives. Smug, inappropriate, the kind of guy who liked the sound of his own voice and the shape of other people's wives. He got himself kicked out on the 3rd day for hitting on a married woman in front of her husband. I didn't lay a hand on him, but it was close. Just hearing his name again made my knuckles itch. Thanks, I muttered, sliding the photo back into my wallet. The woman narrowed her eyes. You okay? I gave her a nod, but I could feel the adrenaline rising, turning my breath shallow. Trevor Mann. Dana. Weekends away. Fancy lodges. That wasn't a fling. That was something else. On the drive back, I didn't turn on the radio. I needed silence to think. Dana hadn't just lied, she'd chosen someone I actively despised. Someone she knew had no business in our lives. Back home, I stood in the gear room, the one I kept off limits to guests. It was part workshop, part office, part-time capsule of my old search and rescue days. I found the drawer I was looking for and pulled out a contact card. Vincent Rhodes. Vin was ex-SR like me, but he'd gone private. Investigations. Surveillance. Corporate leaks. Divorces, sometimes, if the money was right. We hadn't talked in almost a year, but when I called, he picked up on the second ring. Conrad. Been a minute. I've got a situation. Talk. I filled him in. Dana's weird behavior. The lodge clerk. The name. He let out a low whistle. Trevor Mann. That guy's still circling? Apparently. I need to know everything. Financials. Communications. I want her digital footprint mapped and every trace of Trevor's movements for the last 6 months. Then didn't ask why. That's what I liked about him. You want her spooked? No. I want her comfortable. I want her thinking she's smarter than me. Understood, he said. I'll be in touch. Before hanging up, he added, Con, whatever you're thinking, don't do anything sudden. If she's hiding something, let me dig it out. You confront too early, she'll bury the trail. I stood there after the call, staring at the climbing gear hanging from the wall. Harnesses, carabiners, coils of rope. I used to teach people how to stay alive in the wild. Now I was hunting in my own home. Trevor Mann wasn't just some sleaze anymore. He was a signal flare, and Dana had lit it without thinking I'd notice. But I did. And she wasn't just sneaking around with someone I hated. She was inviting him into the life I built. Into my name. My resources. And she was about to learn that I don't lose trails. I followed them to the end. 2 days later, Dana came home like nothing had happened. She walked in carrying a grocery bag, humming some breezy pop song I didn't recognize. She wore jeans, a sweatshirt from some yoga brand, and a ponytail. She looked like the woman I used to know, except everything about her felt like a costume now. Carefully chosen. Calculated. Hey, babe, she said, setting the bag on the counter. I grabbed oat milk and that almond granola you like. I watched her move around the kitchen, smiling, opening cabinets, putting things away like she hadn't just spent the weekend with a man I'd banned from my property. Thanks, I said, keeping my voice even. Appreciate it. That seemed to satisfy her. She poured herself a glass of sparkling water, sat down across from me, and started talking about a fundraiser she was organizing for a local hiking gear co-op. It's going to be this whole outdoorsy gala thing, she said, swirling her glass. Everyone's donating old equipment, and I thought maybe Ridge Edge could set up a booth. We'd get some great exposure. Plus, it'll make you look generous. I nodded. Sure. Sounds good. She smiled wide, like she'd won a prize. Great. I'll send over the info later. You're the best. Later that night, while she showered, I slipped into the garage where I kept my backup gear, trail cams, motion detectors, audio pickups. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but pride was a luxury for men who didn't have their lives hollowed out from the inside. I installed 2 hidden cams in the living room and kitchen, small enough to pass for power outlet screws. Another one went in my office, angled toward the computer. I placed a directional mic in the base of the hallway lamp, just in case she made any late-night calls. Then I waited. Over the next week, Dana floated through the house like a woman in a Hallmark movie. She laughed too loudly, touched my arm at breakfast, lit candles for dinner. She even tried to pull me into bed one night, but I kissed her on the forehead and mumbled something about sore muscles. Every interaction felt rehearsed, like she was playing the role of adoring fiancé just long enough to pull off whatever scam she was running. Meanwhile, Vincent kept digging. He called on a Thursday afternoon, his voice clipped and urgent. "Conrad, we've got something big. Tell me." She took out a loan. $250,000. I gripped the phone tighter. For what? She forged documents tied to Ridge Edge. Set up a dummy business account using your name, your EIN, even your signature. Very good forgery, by the way. Claimed it was for expansion. I stared out at the backyard, where Dana was watering the herb garden like a damn Martha Stewart commercial. "Where's the money now?" I asked. "Gone. Offshore transfer last week. We're tracking the shell account, but it's been bounced through 6 countries already. Whoever helped her knows what they're doing." I didn't answer. "Conrad," Vin added, "you've got identity fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud. Hell, maybe even racketeering, depending on who else is involved. She didn't just cheat. She robbed you." I exhaled slowly. My whole body went still, like it used to during rescue ops right before we found a body. That numb, functional stillness. "Keep digging," I said. Dana walked inside right then, holding up a bag of basil like she'd just found treasure. "Fresh for tonight," she beamed. I smiled back. "Oh, perfect," I said. "You always know what we need." Dana's mother, June, called me that Saturday morning. She rarely called me directly, so when her name popped up on my screen, I knew something was off. "Hey, June," I said, stepping onto the porch with my coffee. "Everything okay?" There was a pause on the other end, the kind where someone's deciding just how much truth to spill. "I don't want to get in the middle of anything," she started, "but Dana asked me for a loan. 15,000. I stayed silent, waiting. "She said you two are investing in some Green Lodge project," June continued, her voice unsure. "Something about environmental grants? Up in Idaho?" I let out a breath. "There's no project, June. And I didn't ask for a loan." Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "She lied to me," she whispered. "She used my retirement savings as collateral for the application." I thought maybe. Her voice cracked. I thought maybe she was just chasing a business dream. "She's chasing something," I said. "But it's not a business." Another long pause. "Tell me what you know." So I told her, slowly, calmly. About the lodge clerk. About Trevor Mann. About the offshore transfer. About the forged documents tied to Ridge Edge. She didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She just listened like a woman peeling back the skin of something she no longer recognized. When I was done, she spoke with a clarity I hadn't expected. "What do you need from me?" I blinked. "Excuse me. I can help," she said. "You're not the first person she's hurt. You're just the first to catch it in time." That's when I realized something else had shifted. June wasn't just a mother anymore. She was an ally. Later that afternoon, Vincent called again. He sounded wired. "We've got another name. Trevor's not working alone. Go on. He's tied to a forest enforcement officer. Lieutenant Harmon. Eastern Montana. Guy's got a record of closed-door deals and mysteriously approved land permits." I knew the name. Harmon had a rep for bending the rules, but most folks chalked it up to small-town politics. "Turns out," Vincent went on, "they've been using shell companies to file fake environmental grant proposals. They funnel the money through fake green projects, clean water initiatives, renewable lodges, solar retreats. It looks legit on paper, but there's no product, no service, just paper trails and disappearing funds." "And Dana?" I asked. "She's listed as a coordinator on 2 of the proposals tied to a company called Econist. Her name's on one of the state filings. It's thin, but enough to show involvement." I ran a hand through my hair, the pieces snapping together like a snare closing. Ridge Edge had been her cover. My reputation, my certifications had given her scam legitimacy. Vincent continued, "There's one more thing. I made a few calls. There's a federal ranger Elise grant. She's been working on a case for months, trying to unravel the same web. I told her about you. She wants to meet." "When?" "Tomorrow morning. Ranger Station in Kalispell. She'll bring what she's got. You bring yours." I hung up and looked out at the horizon beyond the cabin. June's call. Vincent's intel. Dana's lies. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was criminal. That night, I emailed Elise and confirmed the meeting. Then I spent an hour organizing every document, screenshots, camera footage, forged applications. I even printed out photos from the lodge clerk, just in case. At 10 p.m., Dana sat beside me on the couch and leaned her head on my shoulder. "You've been so quiet lately," she said. "Just thinking," I murmured. "Got a lot on my mind." "Well," she smiled, "you're still my rock." I smiled too. "Yeah," I said. "Solid as ever." By Friday, Dana was packed and glowing. She spun around in the bedroom, holding up her new fleece jacket and asking if it looked rugged enough for a weekend in the woods. It's a little last minute, she said, but Trevor found this amazing spot near the border. Totally off-grid. She caught herself. I mean, Travis. Not Trevor. She laughed, like mixing up the name of a secret lover was no big deal. I didn't even flinch. I just folded her thermal socks and handed them to her like the perfect, oblivious partner. Sounds peaceful, I said, zipping up her pack. She leaned in and kissed me. You're being so cool about all this. Seriously, most guys would freak out. I'm not most guys, I said. She smiled. Exactly. You're evolved. I helped her load the gear into her car Saturday morning. Satellite phone. Lockbox. Rolled up topo maps she didn't know how to read. One final kiss, and she was off with a cheerful wave. She thought she was escaping. But I'd already made the call. Elise and Vincent were set up less than 10 miles from the state park trailhead. They'd been tracking her for hours, following the GPS tag Vincent slipped into her backpack while she was in the shower Thursday night. I drove to the ranger station in Kalispell as planned. Elise met me in the back office with a binder full of arrest warrants, fake grant documents, and intercepted wire transfers. A sting was already in motion, coordinated between federal rangers and 2 U.S. Marshals posing as Forest Service contractors. She's meeting Trevor and Harmon at a remote lodge near the border, Elise said. We've got undercover agents already inside. I studied the satellite image on the table. Does she know we're close? Not yet. She thinks she's just going for a final handoff, probably the exit plan. IDs, cash, off-grid location for a while. Harmon's prepping a fake permit for a cross-border trail survey. They were going to disappear. I leaned over the map, tracing the trail with my finger. You're sure you want me at the station? Not closer. Elise nodded. Your job's done. You helped expose the ring, documented the fraud, and gave us every tool we needed. You don't need to be there when it goes down. I looked out the window, watching a squirrel dart across the gravel lot. I do, actually. She studied me for a moment. Closure. Something like that. We set up at a ranger outpost less than a mile from the lodge. I stayed in the back, behind mirrored glass, watching the monitors as Dana stepped into view. Her ponytail was bouncing. She was smiling. Trevor stood beside her, arms folded. Harmon paced, holding a phone. None of them looked worried. That was the beauty of it. They never saw it coming. Elise leaned into her radio. Team, on my go. The trap wasn't just ready, it was airtight. Dana had packed for freedom. But what she walked into was the end of the road. The lodge sat quiet beneath a canopy of pine, just a few hundred yards from the Canadian border. Rustic on the outside, but slick on the inside, satellite uplink, steel-reinforced safes, and enough gear for a month off-grid. It was their launch point, and Dana walked in like she owned it. She wore a smug little smile, still dressed like a catalog at 4, adventure chic. Her boots were spotless. She hadn't broken them in. She hadn't planned to hike anywhere. Trevor was already there, lounging at the table with a drink in hand, boots up, sunglasses on indoors like a parody of himself. Lieutenant Harmon stood near the window, arms crossed, his badge tucked away, no trace of lawfulness left on him. Dana dropped her bag near the door and exhaled. We good? Trevor grinned. Better than good. The funds cleared yesterday. Once Harmon files the last trail permit, we're ghosts. And Ridge Edge? Dana asked, pulling off her jacket. Conrad hasn't said a word. It's like he doesn't even suspect. That's when I stepped out from the hallway. June was behind me. Elise flanked us, calm and composed, her badge displayed openly now. 2 more agents followed, blocking the exit. Dana froze. Trevor stood up slowly, eyes narrowing. What the hell is this? Surprise party, I said. Dana's mouth parted, but no words came. She looked at me, then June, then back again. H, how did you find us? June stepped forward. I gave birth to you, Dana. You think I wouldn't notice when you started lying to my face? Dana turned to Harmon. Do something? But Harmon had already raised his hands. 2 federal rangers stepped in behind him, locking cuffs onto his wrists. You've got the right to remain silent, one of them began. Trevor backed away, fists clenched. You don't have anything on me. Elise stepped up. Actually, we have quite a bit. Offshore transfers traced to your Econist shell, forged grant filings, multiple state-level wire fraud cases. Oh, and your charming little email to Harmon about milking the tree huggers, real poetic stuff. Dana backed toward the kitchen, trembling. Conrad, please, this wasn't supposed to happen like this. I looked at her, and I swear, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel pity either. Just clarity. You turned a life of truth into a game of fiction, I said, voice steady. This is your final chapter. She sank into the nearest chair, hands shaking. You don't understand. I was trying to build something for us. I wanted more than just your wilderness school and frozen dinners. Then you should have left, I said. But you didn't. You stayed and stole and lied. Tears streamed down her face now, and her voice cracked. I never meant to hurt you. Elise stepped in. Dana Boyd, you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Please stand. She didn't move. Elise nodded at the agents, and they guided her up, cuffing her gently. Dana looked over her shoulder one last time. Conrad. But I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. June stood beside me, arms folded tightly over her chest. Her face was stone. She didn't say a word, either. The agents led them out one by one. Harmon first. Then Trevor, who still couldn't believe he'd been outsmarted. Then Dana, who looked 10 years older than she had that morning. I stepped out into the cold afternoon air. The forest around us was quiet, just the whisper of wind through branches. It should have felt like an ending, but it didn't. It felt like survival. The weeks after the arrest felt like coming down from altitude, every breath a little easier, every step a little steadier. Elise kept me in the loop as the case moved forward. Dana pled guilty. So did Harmon. Trevor tried to fight it, but once the forensic accountants traced 3 separate grant fund cycles through his shell companies, his attorney stopped returning his calls. Dana had leveraged my school's name and my clean financial history to secure the fake loans. What saved me was Vincent's timing and the paper trail. Turns out, being obsessively organized paid off when the Fed started untangling the web. In the end, I wasn't charged with anything, but I still had to face the fact that I'd almost lost everything. Ridge took a hit, no doubt about that. Enrollment dropped. A few partners backed out. But it wasn't the death sentence I feared. Word got around that I'd cooperated with the investigation, that I helped bring down a regional fraud ring targeting conservation programs. By mid-spring, we had a waitlist again. People trusted Ridge Edge because they saw I didn't run. I rebuilt my reputation the same way I taught survival, slow, deliberate steps. June became a fixture around the place. She offered to help with logistics, supply inventory, registration emails, meal prep for overnight courses. She never once mentioned Dana again. But sometimes, when we sat by the fire pit in the evenings, she'd get this far-off look. And I knew she was thinking about what her daughter had become. We made peace the quiet way, through shared labor and silent understanding. Vincent sent me a postcard from Belize. Needed a break after that circus, it read. You still owe me lunch. I'd get to that eventually. But for now, I needed to stay grounded. Elise checked in now and then, mostly through email. She invited me to speak at a fraud prevention conference in Denver. People need to hear from someone who saw the slow con up close, she wrote. I agreed. At first, it felt strange. Standing in front of a room full of people in suits, talking about betrayal and forged documents instead of fire-starting techniques for cold weather injuries. But by the end of the day, a man in the front row came up to shake my hand. I lost my company to a similar scam, he said, eyes glassy. You're the first speaker who made me feel like I wasn't just stupid. That stuck with me. So I did another event. And another. Then Elise connected me with a support group. Men who'd been financially or emotionally abused in relationships but never talked about it because, well, who wants to admit that? I shared my story. Nothing dramatic. Just the truth. How Dana made me feel useful, important, chosen. Until the moment I stopped being useful. And I watched men nod. Not with pity, but recognition. Ridge Edge kept growing. People came for survival skills, but stayed for something deeper. Community. Healing. Purpose. One afternoon, while sorting gear in the storage shed, June looked up from her clipboard and said, You know, this place feels different now. I nodded. Me too. She smiled, a little sad. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. No, I said. Maybe it's exactly what it needed to be. 1 year later, Ridge Edge launched its newest program, Rebuild and Recover. It started small. Just an idea I scribbled on a napkin after another seminar where a man cried while telling me he hadn't felt like himself in 3 years. He'd been scammed by a woman he trusted. Lost his house, his savings, his dignity. What helped you bounce back? He asked me, eyes raw. Getting back into the woods, I told him. Carving out purpose in the middle of nowhere. That night, I wrote down a rough idea, a weekend immersion where victims of fraud or betrayal learn basic wilderness survival. Not to become outdoorsmen, but to rebuild confidence through something real. Tangible. Fire, rope, shelter, direction. We ran the first pilot that spring. 5 men. 1 woman. All strangers. All carrying something heavy. The second day, I walked one of them, James, out to a suspended rope bridge we'd set up between 2 pine clusters. It was safe. Tested. But the drop underneath looked far more dangerous than it was. James stood at the edge, his knuckles white around the rope. I lost my farm, he said quietly. Some lady I met online promised she'd help me build an eco-retreat. I mortgaged everything to wire her the startup capital. He shook his head, still not moving. She vanished the next week. I got left with foreclosure notices and her fake last name. I didn't rush him. I just said, fear's natural. The goal's not to erase it. The goal is to move anyway. He looked at me, eyes full of doubt. Then he nodded, took a breath, and stepped out. 1 foot, then the next, all the way across. When he got to the other side, he didn't say a word. He just wiped his face, let out a shaky laugh, and kept walking. Elise came on board officially as an advisor after that first round. She helped structure the curriculum with input from therapists and trauma counselors. We added group debriefs, journaling sessions, night hikes under the stars, where no one had to say anything unless they wanted to. June, God bless her, started the certification process to become a licensed fraud recovery advocate. Said she didn't want to just be useful. She wanted to be equipped. She still made the best trail stew in the county. But now, she was also the one reminding me to get the waiver forms printed and checking over grant applications before we submitted them. Ridge Edge wasn't just a survival school anymore. It was a place people came to when their world had gone sideways and they needed help facing the unknown again. Late one evening, I stood outside the main lodge, watching the sun fall behind the tree line. The sky turned this deep burnt orange, and I could hear laughter, real, unguarded laughter, coming from the fire ring out back. Someone was telling a story, probably exaggerating about how hard the day hike had been. I didn't interrupt. I just stood there, breathing it all in. I'd lost a lot. Dana. The future I thought we were building. The certainty that love meant safety. But I'd gained something I didn't expect. Purpose. Real, solid, earned purpose. Not the kind you hang on a wall. The kind you pass on. As I walked back toward the fire, someone called out, "Hey, Conrad, got any more of those stories about bears and broken ankles?" I grinned. "Only if you promise not to cry when it gets gross." Laughter echoed across the clearing. And just like that, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be.